Yo, what is going on, guys, and welcome back to another video on the channel. And in this video, we're going to be building a real-time chat application using the MERN-Stack. So we're going to use MongoDB as the database to store our data. We're going to use Express in the backend, and then in the front end, we of course will be using React. And as a runtime, we have Node.js. And in this video, we're also going to cover and go through all the steps that you guys need to learn to build real-time full stack applications. And I'm going to keep this video as short as possible so you guys can just focus on building your first real-time chat application. And without further ado, here on the screen right now, you guys can see a demo of the finished application. So here on the left side, I have user 1 logged in, and here on the right side, I have user 2 logged into the application in the incognito window. And whenever we write a message here, so the user 1 can ask a question, for example, and then it updates in real time on the user 2 screen. And then the user 2 can, of course, answer to this message, press send, and it updates in real time on the user 1 screen as well. In this video, we're going to be using React on the front end, and as a styling library, we're going to be using Material UI. And without further ado, let's start coding this application out. And before we actually start coding, I will mention that I have implemented the login and register functionality for this application already, so we don't have to worry about that, because this application could be done without the users just as well with the users. But if you guys want to see a video regarding making the users, making the login form, the register form, connecting that to the database, please let me know in the comments down below, and I will make that video for you guys. But yeah, without further ado, let's start actually coding the chat application right now. And everything right here starts from the backend, so we can go into our backend and make a file called message.js. And this message is of course going to be a Among Us model, and we can just create the schema. We're going to define the user. After that, we're going to define the content. Of course, the message is going to have the content and a user, and then we're also going to add a timestamp to it. And then at the end, we're just going to export everything out and set the schema right. And next, we're going to create a new controller called message.js. And within the message.js controller, we're going to define a GET request, which is going to be used to retrieve all the messages from the database. And we're also going to define a POST request that's going to have the request body of the content. And with the POST request, we can send a message to another user and save it to the database. We're soon going to be creating the middleware to checking the user, and then we're going to export everything out. And next, we're going to create the middleware that is used to verify the user, basically. And here in the middleware, we're going to create a function called getTokenFrom, which we're going to use to retrieve a token from the request. Then we're going to make the token extractor as well, and finally a user extractor that's going to use both of these functions. And now we can go back into our messages where we already defined the user extractor before, and then we're just going to use it basically on this post request function. And now this is a working post request function. And we need to import it into our app.js file. So basically just import it and then app.use the message router. And now our backend is starting to be configured, and we can move on to our front end, and we can define a component that is used to send and view the messages. So we're just going to define a state for the messages and use a useEffect hook to retrieve the messages from our database and then set them into the state. And next we have to create the service that is used to actually retrieve those messages. And within the service, we're going to import Axios and storage service. And then we're also going to define the base URL, which is going to be the local host in this case. We're going to define a getAll function to retrieve all the messages and a create function to create a message to the database. And this create function is of course going to use the token to verify the user. Then we're going to export everything out. And now we can come back into our chat view component and import the message service. And next up, we're actually going to create the chat view, which is going to be used to view and send the messages. So we have to view the messages and create a button to send them. And everything starts by creating a state to the message to send. And we're also going to define a function to handle the message sent. And we're just going to basically inject the database here. So this is not a real time yet, but we're going to fix that soon. And after that, we're just going to create a box where all the messages are going to be shown and add a little bit of styling to that as well. And of course, then add the text field and the button to send the message. And now we'll notice that the basic functionality of the chat application is basically done. So as you guys can see, we can send a message to the chat and it updates the chat view, of course. But we're gonna import the user to the chat view, of course. And we have to modify the app.js file to do that as well. And the reason why we're doing this is because now we can do some styling for the message boxes as well. And by importing the user to the chat view component, we can actually modify the border radiuses and margins of the message boxes. So it looks like that the user that's logged in, like right here, the Moikka, is going to be shown on the right side and the other user going to be shown on the left side of the screen. And while you guys weren't watching, I did do a really slight modification to the backend. So I basically added the message.user with the user ID to the database. So therefore we can see the message users. And now we can actually start implementing the real-time functionality to the application. And it starts from the front end from the source folder by creating a socket.js file. And within the file, we're just going to import socket.io and also the URL for the node environment right here, which is going to be the localhost 3001 for us. And you guys also want to make sure that you npm install the socket.io client. And next, in order for the real-time functionality to work, we need to modify our backend's index.js file. And within the file, we're just going to configure the socket.io client into this. And within this file, we're just going to import HTTP and CORS and use CORS and HTTP to create the server for this. And after that, we're going to define the IO, which is basically going to be the server. And then we're just going to make a connection to the IO. And within the IO connection, we're going to define a function to send and receive the messages. And also at the end, we need to modify this app to be server in order for this to work. And now for the last thing we need to do, we can move on back to our front end and we can basically create a use effect hook that's going to listen to the received messages and change the state according to the received messages. And after that, in our handle send message function, we can socket.emit the message we're going to send. Yeah, guys, that's basically it. Now the chat application is a fully functional real-time chat application. And if you guys made it so far into this video, I want to thank you. I hope you got the app done yourself. And yeah, if you like this type of content, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. But yeah, see you guys in the next video. Peace!